The question that we have to ask is, should we ever tell parents what to do with their children? Should we? And then, do we already? Do we already tell parents what they can or cannot do with their children? Are parental rights, in other words, absolute? Or is there some regulation over what parents can do with their children? So the answer to this question of do we currently tell parents is yes, of course we do. We tell parents that they have to send their children to school. If they don't educate their children, then they're subject to criminal penalties, to truancy. We tell parents that they are not allowed to exploit their children for labor, that you're not allowed to have your child work full time. Your child's not even allowed to work until they're a certain age. The state tells you what you're allowed or not allowed to do. You are not allowed to abuse your child physically, emotionally, verbally. The state tells you you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to prostitute your child. You are not allowed to consent for your child to enter into an underage marriage or below the age of consent. The state tells parents what they're allowed to do. We also tell parents what they're allowed to do regarding their child's sexual behavior. So this idea that there's absolute parental rights is not true. What the left is trying to do right now is they're trying to conflate two things. They're trying to muddy the waters between parents training their children or passing down to their children their belief system, their values, their principles, and their religion versus parents protecting their child from abuse, or the state ensuring that parents protect their child from abuse. These are two very different things. They're not the same at all. We already use the state to ensure that children are protected from abuse, even if that abuse is inflicted by their parents. That's already a thing. That's a good and proper and right way to use the state to protect children from abuse, even if that abuse is inflicted by their parents. That is not the same as children or as parents having dominion over their children, being responsible for their well-being, loving their children, and training their children how in belief systems that they, as the parents, adhere to. But the left right now is trying to muddy these waters. They're trying to say, well, if you believe in parental rights, if you believe that a parent has a right to determine what their children are taught in school, or parents have a right to raise their children in the Catholic faith or in the Jewish religion, then you believe in parental rights to the point that you can't say that parents don't have a right to take their child to a drag show. This is not true, because we already regulate parents' dominion over their child when it harms the child, when that harm rises to the level of abuse. Not just a bad parent in the sense that there are plenty of unwise parents. There are parents who let their children watch too much TV, parents who feed their children too much sugar and too much junk food, and their children are fat, parents who neglect to teach their children right from wrong. This makes you, yes, a bad parent, but that harm to the child doesn't rise to the level of abuse. And when it does, then the power of the state, we all accept that the power of the state is appropriate, that it is appropriate for the state to step in and say, hey, in the interest of this child, for the well-being of this child, this is the proper time for government to be involved.